good stuff, right? Good stuff.
Wait, we're going.
For the third quarter. Hey, folks, it is March the 16th. This is for our 11th grade history course. We're going to pick back up with just a few more slides today regarding Richard Nixon, and then we're going to stop there. I'm going to give you a study island assignment that's over the Cold War, and that's going to be part of your review for a test we're going to take over on Thursday. On Thursday, we're not going to have a lecture. I'm going to post this test for you. And it's only going to be for what happened after World War II to Richard Nixon. And so that whole time period there, I'm going to put it in the Google Classroom. There will be no lecture on Thursday, so make sure you study your notes. The notes I put up for you in the Google Classroom, you can watch the videos again. I have a Quizlet link in the Google Classroom as well. And we're going to have the study island. So with all those materials, you should do really well on the test. There's going to be no class on Friday because it's an A week too. So good stuff. In fact, we're almost done with this unit. We're going to go over a little bit more stuff after Richard Nixon, like a little bit about Ford, a little bit about Carter, some stuff about Reagan and the fall of the Soviet Union, and that's where we're going to stop right there. I don't think we're going to go any further. We might mention a couple of points here and there because I don't know. It's kind of funny. I don't think of the 90s as history, but I don't know. I was like y'all's age in the 90s. I don't know. I guess it's history enough. I don't know, but I'd hate for y'all to get like questions in the 90s. I know you don't give me questions about 2000s just because of 9/11 and stuff. So I don't know. So hey, any case, so Richard Nixon was president, and Nixon he ran on the promise of restoring order, trying to stop some of the cultural revolution from things like the hippie movement, and also getting us out of the war in Vietnam. So that was one thing. So if you remember, we were talking about that, and he wanted to declare peace through honor. So we did do this slide last time, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So, however, the thing is, the withdrawal from Vietnam was very chaotic. And we had a lot of people who for years had supported the United States in Vietnam. And when we withdrew, we kind of left them out hanging. And a lot of these people were terrified because they knew as the North Vietnamese would blow through that they would kill them. And yeah, a lot of the ones who stayed were executed. So you don't want to be on the losing side of something like that. And so here we have a picture of as U.S. forces are withdrawing, you have literally helicopters being packed with throngs of people with everything they can carry. Or sometimes they're just throwing their children on there because they can't fit. And then these helicopters are flying to U.S. naval ships that are jam-packed with refugees that are being brought back to the United States. It was a very traumatic thing for these South Vietnamese people who supported us because they knew that by the United States leaving, their South Vietnamese government would fall apart, and then the communists they had spent their lives fighting against would take over and want revenge. So after the peace was made, remember we had the peace treaty in Paris, the North Vietnamese gradually took over the country, forcing out the last American troops and U.S. sympathizers. So those were the Vietnamese people who supported us out of the country in the Fall of Saigon in 1975. So that picture was from the city of Saigon in South Vietnam. Nixon and Kissinger, remember, he's the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State for a president is a cabinet member who helps him make a lot of his major foreign policy decisions. It's a very important position. Then capitalized on the bad relations with China and Russia after they had violent fights along their borders. So here's the thing. When Zedong Mao in the Communist Revolution took over China and installed communism, girls, he at first was really good. He was really dependent on Stalin. And so Joseph Stalin was like, hey, I'm communist, you're communist. Let's make communism look good for the world. And so at first, Russia was helping them out a lot. But then China started getting very resentful of Russia because the Russians were treating them as if they were not fully as capable of manufacturing and learning at their level. They treated them as kind of like a little brother. And they made a lot of trade agreements with them to where Russia always came out good and China didn't come out so good. And so this is going to spill over into border conflicts. As we see here, they're going to swear each other off and all this stuff. And so Nixon's like, hey, Russia hates us so much, maybe I can make China like us. So in 1972, China invited Nixon to Beijing, where he met with Mao Zedong. Then Nixon flew to Moscow, where he met the Russian president, Brezhnev. Under Nixon's diplomatic, so what Nixon's going to do specifically in Russia, he's going to tell them, you don't really have to worry about us, we're not going to nuke you. Doesn't really ease a lot of the fears. But when he goes to China, he's actually going to open up trade relations with China. During this time, the Chinese didn't really have a lot of technology, manufacturing, and stuff like that. But here, once they're able to start trading with America, it's really going to help their economy blossom all the way up to today. Yeah. So, under Nixon's diplomatic urgings, the superpowers signed the Strategic Arms Limitation Agreement, known as SALT I. We call it SALT I because there's going to be others, which restricted ICBMs, its intercontinental ballistic missiles, and nuclear-armed submarines. So, ICBMs, so they're rockets that carry nuclear devices that go into space and back down on the other side of the world and detonate. They're very hard to stop, and it's very scary. They're hard to detect, too. So you can get nuked, and they're still around today without any way to defend yourself. Nuclear-armed submarines. Nuclear-armed submarines are very scary because, for one, they're almost undetectable. Hey. So sonar and things like that don't pick them up that well. Radar doesn't pick them up. Satellites don't pick them up. So the airplanes have to fly around and hope they spot them. But if they have nukes, they can use short-range missiles that you can't protect against. And so they're trying to restrict these super weapons that could essentially end the world. All right, last one. But the thing is, not everything was good for Nixon. And if you know anything about Nixon to this day, he's often vilified in television and stuff like that if they ever talk about him, because he's going to get face impeachment and resign so that he doesn't get kicked out of office. And then when he does resign, when the president's not president anymore, who becomes president? Vice president. So this guy here, his vice president's going to pardon him. So he can't go to jail or anything. So pretty clever. But Ford will not be able to be president again himself. So he's just kind of like filling shoes. All right. So this brings us to Watergate. After the end of the Vietnam War and the lessened threat of nuclear war, Nixon was very popular. People was like, "Wow, it took a while, but he finally got us out of the war, and we don't feel like we're going to get nuked yet." So that makes you likable. In his re-election, Nixon won every state but one, Massachusetts. But the Democrat Party still had Congress. So he was very popularly elected. He won all states but one. That's hard to do. The only person who won all states was George Washington.
Really?
Yeah. There was less states, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like
So now that's like that was historic, They're like, wow, this hadn't happened in a long time. However, Nixon's staff and the committee to re-elect the president, known as CREEP, oddly enough, so it was like a political action committee, right? It's not a government organization, but it was guys trying to help him get elected, conducted an illegal burglary of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, at the Watergate building. So it's like a hotel, right? So you have the Republican committee and the Democrat committee. And one helps select who's going to represent the Republicans. One selects who's going to represent the Democrats. The Republicans were so scared they were going to lose that without Nixon knowing it, actually, some historians say, his underlings went out and started robbing the Democrats to try to get their secrets and their information. Well, this blew out. There was a whistleblower who told the media what happened. And so the Senate started a special investigation committee, and it was totally publicized on the television and everything. They're like, oh my goodness, a sitting US president had his people go out and spy and do illegal activities on the opposition party. And so the House Judiciary Committee, which is a collection of Congress people who were tasked to look into this, charged Nixon with obstructing justice, abuse of power, and defying subpoenas as impeachable offenses. So a subpoena is Latin for under penalty. If you get a subpoena, that means you have to do one or two things under penalty of law. You have to testify in person or write down a testimony. Or it could mean you have to provide evidence, right? So you don't even have to be on trial for something. But if a judge has a subpoena for you to provide something, you better provide it or you could go to jail or get fined. He didn't do that. Nixon then resigned, leaving his vice president, Gerald Ford, as president. And as I mentioned, Ford is going to, he's going to say, whoop, whoop, wipe Nixon's slate clean. He's going to serve out those 4 years that Nixon was going to serve. And then you'll have the Democrats come in with Carter as president. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to have to create those slides, but that's going to be created for after our test. So I'll have it ready for you next Tuesday. So yeah, here in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and post that study island assignment for y'all. It's going to be over the Cold War, and that's going to help you out with your test on Thursday. So here in a couple of minutes, make sure you log in to check that out. That's going to end it for today. So remember, your test is the end of World War II to Watergate with Nixon. And that's all on the slides that I posted on the Google Classroom. So see you later. Pretty short today, huh?